Okay, so what we see on the screen here, we see a thesis statement, we see topic sentence, a topic sentence, and we also see a textual example that is doing an effective job of corroborating or supporting the topic sentence. Maybe we could just touch base about what's happening in these sentences to start. The thesis statement is an effective one, as we determined, because hopefully your thesis statement likewise has these three components. We see a subject, that is you naming the broad area of study, in this case, 12 Angry Men. We see a topic, you naming specifically what is the rhetoric that I'm going to be addressing in my essay. In this case, excuse me, it's Juror 11's appeals to reason and ethos. And then most importantly, we see a pretty energetic claim. An energetic claim because it is doing an effective job of highlighting why does this juror use this rhetoric? What is the function of this rhetoric in this juror's argumentation? We see words, excuse me, specifically that kind of indicate what that rhetorical function is. You know, we see words like principled. We see words like democratic and fairly and civilly. Okay? So in other words, why does this juror use this rhetoric? Because he's asking everybody, hey, be principled here in your conversation. We need to support this democratic process. He uses these kinds of appeals because he's trying to implore everybody, be fair and be civil. That's why he uses it. So hopefully your thesis statement, when I read it, does the same thing. I will say, I've been reading a lot of thesis statements in the other class, and I'm willing to bet that many of us still have adjustments to make to the thesis statement to reinforce this, okay? That's why I think it's really important that you conference, all right? Look at the topic sentence. If you had a chance to look at those slides, if you had a chance to, even better, watch that tutorial, you'll notice this topic sentence also has components in it that make it an effective sentence. The first thing that a topic sentence has to do is it has to indicate how are you arranging your analysis. That canon of rhetoric where a writer thinks really consciously about how am I going to arrange all these ideas and all these examples for my reader. In this case, I've decided to group my examples chronologically. In this case, these examples are grouped according to Act 2. All these examples in this paragraph would occur in Act 2, which suggests that my first paragraph, all my examples will come from Act 1. So I'll have two body paragraphs, okay? A topic sentence is also effective because not only does it signal, hey, this is how I've arranged things for you, but here's how I'm really intentionally connecting back to my thesis statement. Notice all the language that's connecting back. Ethos, logos, justice, democracy, even juror left. Okay? Topic sentence has two things. It's got a signal organization, and it also has to connect back to the thesis statement. So, the idea of coherence that you just really briefly read about in those slides, that whole concept, that whole skill is shot if you don't have any connectedness between your topic sentence and your thesis statement. I've conferenced with multiple people. In fact, I've conferenced with 4 people in the other class so far. And I say this not to as a scare tactic or anything, but all 4 of those people, in reading just their thesis, their thesis statement and their evidence and their sort of discussion of that evidence in the rhetorical analysis journal, their application of rhetoric to those examples, it was clear to me with all 4 of them, there were going to be real issues with disconnectedness in their rhetorical analysis to varying degrees. One of them, you could tell they were going to be all over the place. Okay, so it's crucial that you get these 2 sentences right. Okay, so let's talk about elaboration and what it will look like. So your task with elaboration, it's more than literary analysis. There are a lot of moving parts with rhetorical analysis. The first step is you have to correctly apply the rhetoric. If you don't correctly apply the rhetoric, again, it's kind of shot. Secondly, you have to do a good job of explaining the function of it. Why do they use it? And then there's this third part where in the sentence that I shape, that I write, I have to intentionally use words constantly to connect back to my topic sentence. In this case, democracy, justice, ethos, logos, okay? Verlin Klinkenborg is a Yale professor. He wrote a book called Several Short Sentences About Writing. He says something in that book that I think is spot on. He says the writer's job is not simply accepting sentences. The writer's job is to make them word by word. Supremely challenging task, super frustrating task, because things can go wrong. And if things go wrong in a sentence, what we know about writing is that could lead to a lot of frustration because this terrible domino effect then happens with subsequent sentences. That's why it's imperative that when you make a sentence, you're making it word by word, super intentionally, which I'm going to try to do right now in front of you. So here's my example. This is a really great example from the play, from page 63 in Act 2, where Juror 11 says directly to Juror 7, when Juror 7 changes the vote. He says, "I've had enough, not guilty." And Juror 11 goes to Juror 7 and in the end says, "You have no right to play with a man's life. This is a terrible and ugly thing to do. Don't you care?" Okay? So now I'm going to write my rhetorical commentary on this example, all the while being mindful of three things. Apply the rhetoric, talk about function, connect back to topic sentence. Okay? When Juror 11 reprimands Juror 7. This is a tricky part because if I use he, I'm just going to write Juror 11 again. My concern about using he there would be it'd be an ambiguous pronoun because he was like, okay, are you referring to Juror 11 or Juror 7? So I'd probably go back and revise the syntax of this sentence so it's not so, well, redundant sounding. But for now, you're getting the point. Juror 11 clearly indicates his clear motive. To participate in this deliberation with a sense of integrity. Moreover, okay, so if I can just talk about what I'm doing so far. I applied the rhetoric. What rhetoric did I apply here in this case? Ethos, clear motives. So I applied the rhetoric, and in applying the rhetoric, I've inherently connected back to the topic sentence and connected back to ethos. I am talking about function, or trying to. So why does he do this? Because he's trying to say, hey, you need to exhibit a sense of integrity when you participate in this process. Okay? But I think he also it's not only clear motives, but he also reinforces ethically his credibility. So I think I want to talk about that. He also broadcasts to the other jurors that his credible, say how I want to put this. I'm just going to use this word again because I can't think of one off the top of my head right now. His credible participation in this trial that his primary goal is to act fairly. These aren't the greatest sentences. I would go back after writing these. What? I did. So these aren't the greatest sentences, but what I'm trying to show you again, firstly, rhetorical analysis, you got to apply the rhetoric correctly. I do think in this example, the rhetoric that is happening, we are saying ethos, establishing credibility with the other jurors. We are seeing clear motive. The second is function. Why does he do it? Because he's imploring people, participate with integrity. He's asking the other jurors, our primary objective is to be fair here. And that's why he gets so angry with juror 3. It's like, this is not fairness. This is selfishness. Okay? In fact, having said that, I would probably go back and revise these sentences and maybe get that in here to reinforce my idea. But then you also see me trying to connect back, and I'm trying to use words constantly. You know, clear motive connects back to ethos, integrity, connects back to essentially values of justice, credibility, ethos, fairly connects back to justice. So rhetorical analysis, just like a lot of moving parts, those 3 things have to constantly be in your head. The final thing I'll say, and then you have the rest of the time for workshop, and I'll begin conversing with a couple of people. I was asked a great question today in Juror 2 class, and somebody was expressing a concern. So how do I avoid sounding redundant in the way that I analyze my examples? I feel like I'm just going to be saying the same thing over and over again. Let me say 2 things about that. Number one, if you're tending to apply the same rhetoric and some of the same function comes through, that's not a problem. That's actually a good thing. Okay? Because what you're identifying is a rhetorical pattern, and that's the whole point of this. What is this juror's rhetorical pattern when he discusses this case with other people? But the way, especially number 2, that you avoid being redundant and sounding like you are just like you have this sort of rubber stamp commentary for every example is talk specifically about the example. Talk specifically about this example. What's happening in this example? Well, in this example, it's when juror 11, it's in his reprimanding of juror 7. That's when this comes through. You know, when he says to him, and I would type this, you know, when he says to him, you know, when he asks the other juror, don't you care? That is a rhetorical question, which is he's not wanting really an answer. He's not expecting the other juror to say like, no, I don't care, or yes, I care. He's asking the question to say to him, you are unfair. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. Okay?